extra attention now to a former Minister of Aviation and a chieftain of the People's Democratic Party, Chief Osita Chidoka. Thank you so much indeed for your time tonight.
Thank you, Shem.
But for you, what came out to you the most in that judgment?
Well, I think the judgment is a sad day for Nigerians. Sad because I thought the judiciary would have been interested in expanding the progress we've made in election management. I do not have difficulties, I do not have issues with them finding in favor of Tinubu as being duly elected. By their own logic, they can arrive at that conclusion if they want. But I didn't like that they talked down on the petitioners. The language was quite intemperate. The language, I was the star witness in the case in 2018, and I didn't see this kind of talking down on the petitioners. I mean, it is the part of the electoral process for us to go to court instead of going to the streets. And to make it sound like the petitioners were frivolous and use such intemperate language, I was a little disturbed. Second one is that I'm ashamed as a Nigerian. Nigerians want to join BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. I'll take 3 examples. Brazil, India, and South Africa are known democracies. Brazil conducted an election, and that election was a big election, and I will figure out how many people voted in that election. So in the case of India, they had 911 million registered voters. Over 600 million people voted. 3.9 million machines were used for that election. Nobody went to court. Not one person. The Congress Party accepted the result. The world has moved on. Nobody goes to court anymore now for election. And there was a voter turnout of 67%. In the case of Brazil, there were 92,000 voting stations. There was 79% voter turnout. 79% in Brazil. And it was done with DRE machines, and there were some also paper machines involved. But in all that voting, the electronic system was subjected to public review. The political parties were present, and there was a public review. So the countries that are in the BRICS, they don't go to court after elections. The election management is such that people do not just go to court. The system is clear.
Are we gradually moving towards it?
It's a shame that our judiciary did not have strong words for INEC. Now, let me tell you, 3 people issued reports on this election. IRI, NDI from the US, EU from Europe, and YAGA from Nigeria. In all their reports, YAGA said INEC did not meet public expectation. IRI said, despite positive expectations, election fell short. EU said, election exposed systemic weaknesses and therefore signals a need for further legal and operational reforms to enhance transparency, inclusiveness. So instead of rambling about whether the regulations is in contradiction to the law or not, I was expecting the judiciary to be tough on INEC on that you don't need to create these ambiguities. If you created rules for the election, then follow the rules. It shouldn't be their headache whether it was the act said so or not. But by INEC telling everybody that this is the process, and there is something that I don't know if everybody is missing. In that election, the rule was that you will snap the result to the beavers and upload to the IREV. The idea is that when you get to the manual collation center at the ward, that the person in that collation center will verify the result you brought physically with the one that was uploaded. That is why if you go to the IREV, the result from Rivers State on the IREV is different from the result announced on the INEC website. If you tabulate the result on the beavers, on some EC8As, with the one on the ward collation, then you will see the disparity. It happened in parts of Benue. Labour Party came up with that. PDP came with a strong case of failures in about almost 25,000 polling units where the rules were not followed. We listed those places and we came with an expert witness who tendered them. The court said no, that the expert witness, we should have put his statement, witness statement on oath in the petition when we were sending in the petition. But it was when we brought the case to court that the court gave us permission to go and inspect INEC material. It was the expert investigation report of the materials, inspection of the materials, that gave right to the witness statement on oath. So there was no way you could have said something you hadn't seen. INEC needed to give us certified true copies of results for us to verify that INEC stayed by its own regulations. So there were 9,000 cases of overvoting in the election. 9,000 cases. There were almost 15,000 cases of where the INEC presiding officers did not follow the rules.
As identified by the PDP.
As identified by the PDP.
How come that the PDP was find it difficult in the eye of this very trial court to prove this case with evidence?
So we came with an expert witness. But they said that the expert witness ought to have been put as part of the petition, the witness on oath. We subpoenaed him because we couldn't have done that without the man having to review the work of INEC. And we got only the power to review when the case started. So we couldn't have joined that with our petition.
One will imagine that there are copies of the results in several copies.
Yes.
The one for the agents, the INEC, and all what have you.
Yes.
And the PDP agents privy to the copies, or don't they have the copies?
Yes, we have the copies.
Yes, that is the position of the court.
Yes,
that you should have come forward with, prove your evidence with the one that you have and the one that you're disputing.
Right. The one we are disputing is the one that INEC certified. So we needed to see the INEC certified to be sure that what our agents are showing us is correct. It is upon comparing the two that we're able to make a case and say, yes, this is consistent. Doesn't it make sense? The ones our agents have are duplicate copies. So sometimes it's not very clear, but when you get the INEC certified copy, then you can see whether it was not stamped, it was not signed, it was the number of
when you deny that access.
So we got that access, and it is based on that access, after the petition has started, that the expert witness made his case and was subpoenaed to come and tender it. The court said, and I don't want to quarrel with the judiciary on this. I think that it is their right to interpret the law as they deem fit. But my point is the wider issue of the disgrace that Nigeria suffers. The process of going to court, it looks to me like two institutions don't want our elections to go well. The first institution is INEC. INEC is a monumental disgrace. INEC is an organization that I'm ashamed of to associate as a Nigerian. Because the promises INEC made, the promises they made with Anambra election, the Ekiti election, the Osun election. I came on this year program and called for a third-party verification of the INEC system so that we are sure that on an election day, that what is going to happen that day will not lead to a glitch. On election day, INEC said there was a glitch. When they did a mock election, they did it only in 463 or so polling units. That was small. The EU report pointed out that INEC did not test this system for a large-scale election like it did. But despite not testing the system, it's a shame that INEC goes to court to question whether not complying with its regulations is a fact, doesn't make it a ground to cancel an election. What is important in Nigeria going forward is that we have elections, like I cited. Why do we want to be amongst the BRICS if we can't conduct a simple election? India, 900 million people, and they conducted. Indonesia, 190 million registered voters, and they conduct elections.
I mean, you imagine that from your summation, that the election of 2023, the presidential election, was a sham.
It's a joke. Okay. Because let me tell you, the votings happened at the polling unit. There were people inferred that if we had seen the results from the polling unit, and they went to collation and collated what we saw on the polling unit, I can bet you nobody will be in court. And it is possible President Tinubu will have won. It's possible.
So you don't believe he won?
So it's possible, but if you go by the allegations we made about the disparities in the election, then he didn't win.
Okay. So now I'd like to ask you, do you believe in the 6.984520 million votes that Atiku Abubakar got?
If I believe or not, will mean that I need to start substantiating them.
So the question I'm asking is that Atiku Abubakar won in Osun State.
Yes.
Atiku Abubakar won in Adamawa State.
Yes.
But those fraudulently won too.
Okay, let me tell you what the problem is. The problem is not winning. I didn't think that APC will not win 30% of the votes cast or something to that effect. Well, what you see is that you go to a state like Kebbi, Atiku Abubakar comes first, and by the time the collation is finished, the difference between him and Tinubu reduces to 10,000, 15,000 votes. So the problem was not in who won a state. It is in the differential, how the results were added to cause a reduced differential in votes. So the issue is not about winning. You see, it's deceptive. Let me take the Southeast, for instance. P2B won the Southeast outrightly. And let me tell you why he did so. Because the mood in the Southeast was like the mood in the North in 2015, when the North felt it was their turn to take back power from President Jonathan. Nobody doubted that there were millions of voters turning up in the North because they were heavily mobilized. As the Igbos were heavily mobilized in viewing that this time is our turn to produce a president. So when you look at the result, that's not the problem. The problem is that in some places, there were issues. And like I said, the election of 2023 has come and gone, and it's a disaster by INEC. They delegitimize President Tinubu's win. So if he had won the election, the lack of legitimacy is because of how INEC behaved in that election. If INEC had had a problem with its servers on election day, and there was issue of non-transmission, I mean, it can happen. There was a glitch. I agree with them. What they needed to have done after the election is to scan all their hard copies and populate it in the IREV and said, the ones that were not sent on the polling unit day, we had the hard copies. This is it. Nigerians can go there and review. They could have called for a review of the election. In the case of, I think it was in Brazil, when Bolsonaro said he doubted that the results were as was done, the court refused him to even go further because there has been reviews after the election. And the court said, no, you can't challenge it. And fined him for coming to the court for that. Because INEC ought to have said to everybody, look, don't worry about whether we transmitted electronically or not. After the election, see all our results. It was the same behavior that JAMB did during that Mesoma's case. JAMB just came up and said, look at the server time. At 10:20, she tested this to the result. This is what the server gave her back. She tested it again. This is what the server gave her back. They produced evidence. So nobody could fault JAMB, a public institution, fighting to retain its integrity, decided to make open his system and said, this girl was testing this thing. He tested it 4 times.
But in the case of INEC, you don't think the integrity is there?
No, the integrity is not there because they ought to have said to everybody, this is the results.
Let's look at the politics of the election. Atiku Abubakar got 6,984 votes, 520 votes. Peter Obi got 6,101,533 votes, while Bola Tinubu got 8,794,726. But you will look at it, the totality of that vote, if you put together, because there are those who believe that the reason, majorly, why if Peter Obi and Atiku had been in the same camp, maybe they would have won the election. And you look at it, if you put at the votes, the 6 million votes of over 6 million votes of Peter Obi and over 6 million votes of Atiku Abubakar, it gives you 13,086,053 votes, as against the Bola Tinubu of 8,794 votes. Atiku and Peter Obi got 11,262,978 votes in 2019. Yes. Don't you think it's the political issues around the election that caused this? Maybe.
So that's another that's another story. And I would say loudly and clearly. That's why I said the court could have found that Tinubu won the election. And a review of INEC data by a third party and review could have found the same result. But I'm saying by putting this aura of infamy around the election, of misbehavior, what you have done is that they have delegitimized the election, because the point you're making is a very strong point. Nowhere do opposition parties split their votes against an incumbent government. But in this particular election, the APC was not a very popular party. And if you, like you said, if you put together the two votes, plus if you put Kwankwanso's votes, which are over 1 million, over a million, it would have been like 14 million.
Yeah.
Yes. So, but the question remains that what INEC did on the election day, which is why I'm holding them responsible, will have made it that nobody will have gone to court. If they have just said, hey guys, no problem, everybody, see our results. Because like you said, this 6 million, 8 million here, that's it. See how we came about. But we know that there was a case like River State, where what was done in the polling unit was not what was reported. A case like Benue, where what was done was not what was reported. A case like the PDP brought, where there were about 25,000 polling units, where there were infractions of various types. Now, whether those infractions will substantially change the result of the election, we will not know unless we did that tabulation. And that tabulation will have been easy for INEC to have just said.
Where do we go from here?
Yes, where we go from here. I think there are three important issues. One is that I'm going to campaign seriously for a constitutional amendment that requires us not to swear in, to finish court cases before the swearing in of a president. I think it delegitimizes presidents when they are in office, making decisions, and they are subject of election petitions. I don't think it is good for Nigeria. I think we need to do that. And that means that we should take presidential cases straight to the highest court. In the case of Brazil, I find an interesting phenomenon. The election, they have an election court, which at the beginning of an election, the justices of the Supreme Court, Court of Appeal, and the Federal High Court elect two judges, justices from there to that court, and the president nominates 2 lawyers who are not judges to be in the panel, so that everybody sees the transparency of what was done. The kind of unanimous judgments we are getting today in Nigeria is disturbing, because under Buhari and Obasanjo, always had 2-1, 3-1, 4-2, 5-2. Reason, judges who believe in substantive justice, who don't believe in procedural, that we should use procedure to damage justice, have come out like Oguntade to say that he thinks Buhari won the election because of this substantial non-compliance. But the majority had their way. We've had somebody like the former High Ambassador to Washington, who said that the 2003 election falls short of all expectations. So the nature of our justice system now makes it that I think we should have a special court for election petitions. Mm-hmm. And I think at the highest court of the land, we should determine who is president before swearing in. Second one, I think that being president with 33% of the votes in a multi-party election is a little disturbing. It doesn't give you a strong mandate. So I think we should put that 50% clause in our constitution. After the first election, the two top candidates will go out to get 50%. The reason being, it will force us at that time to vote against our ethnic divisions. We must choose of the two that we're seeing. So I think we need to put that. The third one is that I think that the Electoral Act, since the courts always rely on the Electoral Act, I think we need to annex what is in the INEC guideline into the Electoral Act. Both the EU, IRI, and YAGA talks about ambiguities in the Electoral Act. So maybe we need to be more specific about the procedure for elections in Nigeria to improve transparency. Finally, I think that it's a sad and shameful thing for Nigeria, after 24 years of democracy, to still be going through this type of process.
All right. Where I would like us to anchor is about the state of your party and what is going on. I mean, there are those who also make inference that the situation in the PDP also calls for some kind of introspection. And I'd like you to listen to this. This is the FCT minister asking for this from the leadership of the party. Take a listen to him.
let me tell you this. How would PDP have won the election when you fail to consider the mood of the nation at that time? How would they have won the election? Look at the areas that PDP didn't win. Well, what happened? Because of arrogance, because of greed, because of impunity. If PDP had done what they're supposed to do, then you would have thought about that.
Not because of some of you who worked against
Not for some of our who feel that there should be equity, there should be justice, there should be fairness. And that's why I'm calling the National Working Committee. They should, with all matter of urgency, suspend the presidential candidate, suspend people like Abin Tabor, suspend people like Sule from the party, so they can rebuild the party.
We have 30 seconds to close. I'd like to get your comment in how the PDP can move forward from here, gleaning from what Mr. Nyesom Wike said.
Well, PDP is a party that, like you said, needs introspection. And that introspection is going on. That thinking is going on. We lost our base in the election, Southeast. We had issues with our governors, and we had challenges. I will not want to respond directly to what the FCT minister is saying, but for me as a PDP member, what he calls for is that we can remake ourselves. And that remaking of PDP means that we must look at the time of the day. The demographics of Nigeria has changed. The PDP that won elections 1999 to 2011 is not the PDP of today. The demographics of Nigeria has changed. People have forgotten our days in office. People have forgotten the great strides PDP made in moving Nigeria from a 3 billion foreign reserve country to 67 billion. People have forgotten the 7% growth in the economy that PDP did. People have forgotten that EFCC, ICPC was done by PDP. So where we are now is to remodel PDP to appeal to the demographics that has been loyal to PDP for the years.
Chidoka is the former Minister of Aviation and a member of the PDP. Thank you so much indeed for your time and your perspectives.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it.